3 in the morning. Your mind replays the same conversation for the 100th time. The person who controls your thoughts sleeps peacefully, unaware they have become your mental prison warden. Scientists estimate the average person has 60,000 thoughts per day. For millions of us, thousands of those thoughts belong to someone else. Someone who may not even remember our name. Someone who lives rent-free in the most expensive real estate on earth, human consciousness. Carl Jung spent 50 years mapping the darkest corners of the human mind. What he discovered about obsessive attachment will disturb you. The person you cannot let go of does not actually exist. The prison you live in was built by your own hands. The key to freedom requires destroying something you believe you love. This is not about moving on. This is about waking up from a psychological coma most people mistake for love. Jung called it projection, the unconscious act of placing our inner world onto other people. We meet someone and immediately begin construction. We build them a throne in our mind, crown them with powers they never asked for, and worship the God we created. The woman who broke your heart 3 years ago lives more vividly in your thoughts than she ever did in reality. The friend who betrayed you occupies more mental space than the people who actually care about you. The parent who disappointed you controls your decisions decades after their death. These mental phantoms grow stronger with distance. Physical absence feeds psychological presence. The less we actually know about someone, the more our imagination fills the gaps. We fall in love with our own creation and call it their name. Dante wrote about Beatrice for 30 years. He met her twice, spoke to her once. She died young, leaving him to love a ghost. His obsession produced some of history's greatest poetry, but Jung would call it something else: psychological possession. History overflows with examples. Millions of Germans projected their need for a strong father onto a failed artist with a mustache. Teenage girls screamed themselves unconscious at concerts, projecting their unlived dreams onto strangers with guitars. Social media influencers become the objects of obsession for people who know nothing about their actual lives. Jung discovered something terrifying. The person we project onto becomes a container for parts of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge. The unreachable love interest carries our own capacity for passion. The cruel parent holds our own inner critic. The friend who abandoned us mirrors our own fear of commitment. We fall in love with ourselves and call it someone else's name. Modern society manufactures psychological dependency like a factory produces cars. Every movie, song, and advertisement programs us to seek completion through others. The message repeats until it becomes invisible. You are incomplete without the right person. Social media platforms engineer addiction to phantom relationships. Algorithms feed us carefully curated glimpses of lives we will never touch. We scroll through highlight reels and build detailed fantasies about strangers. The girl from high school becomes a character in our personal drama. The ex-boyfriend's new girlfriend becomes the villain in our story. Dating apps gamify human connection. Swipe left, swipe right, but never actually connect. We collect matches like trophies and conversations like achievements. The apps profit from our loneliness, keeping us close enough to hope but far enough to never satisfy our hunger. Celebrity culture creates professional objects of projection. We know more about famous people than our neighbors. Their breakups affect our mood. Their successes make us feel inadequate. Their problems make us feel superior. They become characters in the story we tell ourselves about life. Jung warned about mass psychology 70 years before social media existed. He saw how entire populations could become possessed by shared projections. The collective unconscious contains templates for obsession, and modern technology activates every single one. Romantic movies teach us that persistent pursuit equals true love. Stalking becomes dedication. Ignoring boundaries becomes passion. The message is clear. If you love someone enough, reality will bend to your will. The entertainment industry monetizes our projections. We buy products endorsed by people we will never meet. We adopt opinions from personalities who perform for cameras. We model our lives after characters written by committees in boardrooms. Jung understood something most people miss. Individual psychological dependency serves those in power. A population addicted to external validation cannot think for itself. People obsessed with phantom relationships ignore real problems. Citizens desperate for approval make obedient consumers. Personal becomes political when millions of minds are held captive by the same psychological patterns. Jung's diagnosis cuts deeper than any therapy session ever could. The person you cannot release from your mind is already dead. They died the moment you stopped seeing them as a human being and started worshiping them as a symbol. Real people are complicated, inconsistent, and disappointing. They have bad breath in the morning and annoying habits. They make mistakes, hold boring opinions, and sometimes choose other people over you. The person in your head has none of these flaws because they are not a person. They are a projection of your own unlived potential. Active imagination was Jung's technique for confronting these internal phantoms. He would have patients visualize conversations with the people who haunted them. The goal was not reconciliation, but recognition. Most people discovered the voice in their head was their own voice, disguised and projected outward. Sarah, one of Jung's patients, spent 2 years obsessing over a man who rejected her. Through active imagination, she realized she was in love with his confidence, a quality she refused to develop in herself. The man became a container for her own disowned power. Michael could not stop thinking about his deceased father's disapproval. Jung helped him recognize that the critical voice belonged to his own inner judge. His father's death changed nothing because the real relationship existed entirely in Michael's mind. Shadow work reveals why we cling to people who hurt us. The parts of ourselves we disown must live somewhere. We project them onto others and then become addicted to their presence. The cruel person carries our own capacity for cruelty. The abandoning person holds our own fear of intimacy. Letting go means accepting a terrifying truth. We must become the person we fell in love with. We must develop the qualities we worship in others. We must integrate the shadow we project onto enemies. Most people prefer the familiar pain of obsession to the unknown territory of psychological independence. Being possessed by others feels safer than being responsible for ourselves. Jung called individuation the process of becoming who you actually are, rather than who others expect you to be. It requires withdrawing projections and reclaiming the energy we waste on phantoms. The process feels like death because something does die, the false self that needed external validation to exist. Jung discovered that obsessive energy could be transformed into creative power through a process he called the transcendent function. The same psychological force that creates prison bars can build works of art. Active imagination begins with a simple question: what would this person say if they were sitting here right now? Most people discover the voice is remarkably similar to their own inner dialogue. The words we imagine others thinking about us usually reveal our own self-judgment. Write letters you will never send. Have conversations with empty chairs. Draw pictures of the person who haunts you. The goal is not communication, but recognition. You are talking to yourself. Dreams often provide the key to understanding our projections. Jung taught patients to pay attention to dream figures who resemble people from their waking life. The dream version usually revealed the psychological function the real person served. One patient dreamed repeatedly of his ex-wife criticizing his life choices. Jung helped him see that the dream wife represented his own inner critic. The real woman had been gone for years, but he kept her alive in his psyche to maintain familiar patterns of self-attack. Synchronicity, meaningful coincidences, often occurs during the process of withdrawing projections. You stop obsessing over someone and suddenly see them everywhere. You release attachment to an outcome, and it immediately manifests. Jung believed these events marked moments when the unconscious mind aligned with conscious intention. The transcendent function transforms obsessive energy through creative expression. Write the story of your phantom relationship. Paint the person who haunts you. Compose music about your imaginary conversations. Art externalizes internal struggles and reveals their true nature. Withdrawal of projections requires radical honesty. List every quality you admire in the person you cannot release. Then ask, where does this quality exist in me? List every trait you hate about them. Ask the same question. The person in your head is a mirror reflecting parts of yourself back to you. Integration means developing the qualities you worship and accepting the traits you despise. You admire their confidence? Build your own. You hate their selfishness? Accept your own capacity for self-interest. The goal is not to forget the person, but to stop needing them to exist. When you reclaim your projections, other people become human again, instead of symbols in your personal mythology. Psychological independence costs more than most people are willing to pay. Freedom means accepting complete responsibility for your emotional state. No one else can make you happy, angry, or sad without your unconscious cooperation. The benefits of obsession are real. Phantom relationships provide endless entertainment. Mental movies starring yourself and your favorite phantom play better than Netflix. Imaginary conversations feel more satisfying than real ones because you control both sides. Obsession creates meaning through suffering. If you are not thinking about someone who does not think about you, what will fill the mental space? If you stop waiting for someone to return, what will you do with your time? If you release your attachment to being wanted by someone who does not want you, who will you become? Psychological independence threatens existing relationships. Friends who bond over shared complaints lose their favorite topic. Family members who control through guilt find their power diminished. Romantic partners who rely on jealousy and drama discover you no longer play their games. Society punishes people who refuse to participate in collective projections. You stop caring about celebrity gossip and have nothing to discuss with coworkers. You quit social media and lose connection with acquaintances. You withdraw energy from phantom relationships, and others call you selfish or cold. Loneliness is the price of authenticity. Most human connection is based on shared projections and mutual validation of illusions. Real relationships require two people who know themselves well enough to see each other clearly. Jung spent years in isolation. During his own individuation process, he called it his confrontation with the unconscious. Friends abandoned him. Colleagues dismissed his work. His marriage nearly ended. The price of psychological freedom is the end of relationships based on projection and need. The reward is relationships based on choice rather than compulsion. When you stop needing others to complete you, you can love them for who they actually are instead of who you need them to be. Most therapeutic approaches fail because they try to make obsession more comfortable instead of eliminating it entirely. They teach coping strategies for phantom relationships instead of exposing their illusory nature. Jung's approach is surgical. Cut out the psychological tumor completely, even if healthy tissue comes with it. Most people choose the slow death of obsession over the quick pain of psychological surgery. Smartphones turned every human being into a potential object of obsession. We carry devices that provide unlimited access to the lives of 7 billion people. Social media feeds stream directly into our psychological projection systems. Digital stalking requires no physical presence. We can monitor someone's activities, relationships, and thoughts without them knowing. Instagram stories provide detailed documentation of lives we will never touch. LinkedIn updates feed our fantasies about professional success. Twitter reveals the inner thoughts of strangers who become characters in our personal narratives. Dating apps create artificial scarcity around human connection. Unlimited options produce endless dissatisfaction. We swipe through hundreds of faces and create elaborate fantasies about people we have never met. The apps profit from keeping us searching rather than finding. Parasocial relationships with online personalities replace real human connection. YouTubers become our friends. Podcast hosts become our confidants. Instagram influencers become our role models. We know intimate details about people who do not know we exist. Algorithms study our psychological patterns and feed them back to us. The content we consume reflects our projections and reinforces them. We see what we want to see and believe our curated reality represents the world. Text messaging allows us to craft perfect versions of ourselves and maintain phantom relationships indefinitely. We can appear wittier, kinder, and more interesting through carefully edited messages. The person on the other end falls in love with our digital performance, not our actual personality. Online dating profiles become projection templates. We swipe based on carefully curated images and optimized descriptions. We match with marketing materials, not human beings. The inevitable disappointment of real meetings reveals the gap between projection and reality. Digital communication lacks the feedback mechanisms that regulate real relationships. Body language, tone of voice, and physical presence provide information that text messages cannot convey. We project emotions and intentions onto digital communication that may not exist. The internet makes it impossible to truly let go of anyone. Their digital footprint remains accessible indefinitely. Old photos resurface through algorithmic recommendations. Mutual friends provide unwanted updates. The past refuses to stay buried in a world where everything is archived. Modern technology has weaponized our ancient psychological vulnerabilities. The same brain that once helped us survive in small tribes now drowns in information about billions of people we will never meet. Jung's insights connect to 25 centuries of wisdom about attachment and suffering. Buddhist teachings identify attachment as the root of all psychological pain. The Buddha taught that we suffer not because of what happens to us, but because of our attachment to how we think things should be. Existentialist philosophers like Sartre and Beauvoir wrote about radical freedom and responsibility. We are condemned to be free, which means condemned to create meaning rather than discover it. The person we cannot let go of represents our refusal to accept this freedom. Ancient Stoic philosophers taught similar lessons. Epictetus wrote that we are disturbed not by things, but by our judgments about things. The person who haunts your thoughts has no power over you except the power you give them through your own mental activity. Jung's concept of individuation parallels the philosophical tradition of authentic existence. Living authentically means making choices based on your own values rather than the expectations of others. Phantom relationships represent the opposite. Living in service to people who exist only in your imagination. Psychological independence becomes political resistance when entire populations are manipulated through their projections. Advertising exploits our need for external validation. Political propaganda activates our tribal projections. Media creates shared phantoms that distract from real problems. The person who withdraws their projections becomes ungovernable. They cannot be manipulated through shame, guilt, or the promise of acceptance. They make decisions based on internal guidance rather than external approval. This threatens every system that depends on psychological dependency for control. Individual liberation has collective consequences. One person who stops participating in shared illusions gives others permission to do the same. Recovery from projection addiction spreads through communities like a virus of consciousness. Jung believed that psychological evolution was the next stage of human development. Just as we evolve beyond purely physical survival, we must evolve beyond psychological dependency. The individuated person represents a new form of human being, one who takes complete responsibility for their inner world. The choice between psychological slavery and freedom is the defining challenge of our time. We live in an age of unprecedented mental manipulation and artificial phantom relationships. The ability to distinguish between projection and reality may determine whether human consciousness evolves or degrades. Jung's vision extends beyond personal healing to species transformation. Each person who achieves psychological independence contributes to the collective awakening of human consciousness. The moment arrives when you must choose between the familiar prison of obsession and the terrifying freedom of psychological independence. This choice cannot be made gradually or partially. Like jumping across a chasm, you either make it to the other side or fall into the gap. Killing the phantom requires more courage than physical death. At least when the body dies, others witness your passing. When you destroy the person who lives in your mind, you die alone. No one else can see the funeral except you. The phantom fights back during its execution. It will remind you of perfect moments that never actually happened. It will whisper about possibilities that never existed. It will promise that if you just hold on a little longer, the fantasy might become reality. Your mind will generate one final surge of memories, dreams, and hopes. Every love song will sound like it was written about your phantom relationship. Every movie will seem to tell your story. The universe itself will appear to conspire in keeping the illusion alive. This is the psychological equivalent of withdrawal from addiction. The phantom relationship has been providing a steady supply of mental stimulation, emotional drama, an existential meaning. Removing it creates a vacuum that feels like suffocation. The death of the phantom feels like the death of love itself. You may believe you will never care about anyone else the same way. This fear is correct. You will never again mistake psychological projection for love. Real love requires the absence of obsession, not its presence. What emerges from the ashes of phantom relationships is creative energy. The same psychological force that maintained your mental prison becomes available for art, work, and authentic relationships. You discover that the energy you thought belonged to someone else was always yours. The transformation happens in an instant and takes years to complete. The moment you withdraw your projections, the person becomes human again. They shrink from godlike proportions back to normal size. Their power over your emotional state disappears immediately. But the habits of obsession take time to fade. You may feel empty at first. The mental space previously occupied by phantom conversations and imaginary scenarios sits vacant. This emptiness is not depression. It is the silence that precedes authentic self-expression. Freedom feels different than you expected. Instead of relief, you may experience a strange sadness, not for the person you released, but for the part of yourself that believed love required suffering. Jung's most disturbing insight cuts to the core of human psychology. The person you cannot let go of never existed in the first place. Every quality you loved about them actually lives inside you. Every trait you hated about them reflects something you refuse to accept about yourself. Your phantom relationship was always a relationship with yourself. The conversations in your head were always conversations between different parts of your own psyche. The person who rejected you was your own self-rejection wearing someone else's face. The brutal truth is that you have been in love with yourself the entire time, specifically with the parts of yourself you refuse to acknowledge, develop, or accept. The confident person you worship carries your own disowned confidence. The creative person you admire holds your own unexpressed creativity. The cruel person you obsess over embodies your own capacity for cruelty. This discovery is both devastating and liberating. Devastating because it means every moment spent longing for someone else was a moment stolen from your own development. Liberating because it means everything you thought you needed from others already exists within you. The person who broke your heart was teaching you about your own capacity for heartbreak. The friend who betrayed you was showing you your own potential for betrayal. The parent who disappointed you was reflecting your own inner critic back to you. Jung spent decades helping people reclaim the energy they had projected onto others. He discovered that behind every obsession lies an unused talent, an unexpressed emotion, or an unaccepted aspect of personality. The phantom relationship serves as a distraction from the real work of becoming yourself. The final step is not forgiveness. It is recognition. Thank the person who served as a container for your projections. They played their role perfectly, even if they never knew they were performing. Their rejection forced you to find what you were looking for inside yourself. Their absence created space for your authentic self to emerge. Real love becomes possible only after you stop using other people as containers for parts of yourself. When you develop your own confidence, you can appreciate confidence in others without needing to possess it. When you accept your own capacity for cruelty, you can see it in others without being destroyed by it. The person you thought you could not live without disappears, and you discover you were never living with them in the first place. You were living with a ghost you created from your own unlived life. Jung's final challenge is simple and terrifying. Become the person you fell in love with. Develop the qualities you worship in others. Accept the traits you project onto enemies. Take complete responsibility for your inner world. The phantom dies. The real person is born. Love becomes a choice instead of a compulsion. The mind that once held others prisoner becomes free to create, explore, and connect authentically. The energy that maintains psychological slavery becomes the fuel for psychological liberation. Your mind is your own again. What will you do with it?